what's going on. Everybody on the call, if you want to drop a greeting to Rebecca, feel free. Let her know where you're calling in from. So, hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. This is our fifth in our series of virtual candidate meetings with the Democratic contenders for New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. I am Maggie Savoca. Just going to mute some people as they come in. And with OneNJ7, we're a grassroots all-volunteer organization committed to strengthening democracy, engaging voters, and flipping NJ7 blue. These meetings are a key part of that effort, giving voters the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates who want to represent us in Congress. We're planning to invite all the candidates to an in-person forum in November after Election Day. So if you're not already signed up for our newsletter, I'd encourage you to do that. I'll drop the website in the chat later. So over the past few weeks, community members have and throughout all those very serious stories. Oh, did I just mute? Sorry. Should have turned everybody. Rebecca, I think I might have muted you if you want to.
That's okay. Yeah.
There you are.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So over the past few weeks, people who signed up have submitted questions. We've condensed them down into 9 that hit all the topics that were submitted. So they're going to be asked by attendees who volunteered to help facilitate the conversation. And we just ask that if you ask a question, you try and keep it as brief as possible in the interest of time. So just a couple of notes, the meeting is being recorded and the full set of recordings will be made available after the entire series of candidate meetings has concluded. And we ask that you don't share the questions that we discussed today. Please keep yourself on mute unless you're asking a question. And as we begin our meeting, we're going to give Rebecca a few minutes to introduce herself to us. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maggie. And hello to everyone that I haven't had a chance to meet in person or talk to yet. I really appreciate you all taking some time out of what I'm sure are very busy schedules right now to chat with me. I'm really looking forward to that conversation tonight. I will say I intentionally picked this time because I was trying to work around bedtime for kiddos. So hopefully this time worked out for folks. But like I said, really looking forward to the conversation. So for folks that I haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Rebecca Bennett. I am a former Navy helicopter pilot, business leader, mom of 2, and I'm running for Congress in our district because I really want to stand up and fight for the version of the country that we want to live in, the version that I want to leave for my daughters and the next generation. And we all deserve better than what we're getting right now from our current leadership. So I'll give you all just a little bit about my background and then look forward to the discussion and the questions tonight. So just to give everyone a little bit of my background, I grew up in a small town in Texas. And service has always been a really big part of my life. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've been given, and I wanted to pay it forward in some way. So I landed on military service as a path to do that. And from there, I got an ROTC scholarship to study chemical engineering at Cornell University, and then decided that I wanted to fly helicopters really for 2 reasons. One, I like to do hard things like run for Congress. And 2, I grew up playing a lot of sports. I played a lot of soccer growing up. And as a helicopter pilot, you fly with a crew, the very team-based approach to the missions, which really appealed to me. So from there, I went to flight school, and then I flew the Navy version of the Army Black Hawk for over a decade. I led missions, people and teams all over the world, deployed on several different kinds of ships, spent most of my time on aircraft carriers, and generally I'm just very grateful to have been able to serve our country in that capacity. After doing that for over a decade, I made the decision to transition to the private sector. So I went to Wharton, got my MBA, and then I moved into healthcare. People are sometimes surprised that I made such a big pivot moving from aviation into healthcare. But for me, it was really about wanting to continue mission-driven work of helping make the world better. And so I've been very focused in the private sector on how do we increase access, increase quality, and decrease costs for patients. On the personal side of things, my husband is also a veteran. He's a submarine officer, so I always joke we have, the above air and the underwater covered between the two of us. And when we were looking at where we wanted to move when I was getting out of the military, we'd really lived all over the country at this point. And ultimately, we decided we wanted to come here to New Jersey. I think for a lot of the reasons that other folks move here, it's the best schools in the country. It's a great place to raise a family, and our daughters are really thriving here. On the political side of things, I really did not consider myself politically engaged when I was on active duty. The military is supposed to be an apolitical organization. But for me, that really changed when Donald Trump came on the scene back in 2015, 2016. I was on active duty the first time that he got elected, and so there wasn't much that I could do at the time. But whenever I said I was going to do whatever I could when I got off active duty, which is what I did. So I started volunteering as a grassroots volunteer all the way through the last election. And when the dust settled, I truly felt this calling to lean in because I'm the kind of person that runs at problems. And this time was different. And I knew I had to do everything I could to stand up and fight for this country that I love and that I swore an oath to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I believe we are at a crucial moment in our country's history right now where we are all being called to do more. And I view this as the next chapter in my service journey to this nation. So at this point, you may have gathered I'm not a typical politician. I don't come from a powerful political family or wealthy family, but that's a strength for us in this campaign because we need someone who gets it, who's going to help lift other people up to achieve their version of the American dream. I know what it's like to be a mom raising kids in this district, dealing with things like rising grocery prices, astronomical childcare, and rising housing costs because my family is dealing with all those things too. We're doing this campaign differently. We're getting out and meeting with everyone and listening to everyone. And I'm truly only doing this because I want to be a voice for all of us in Washington. And when I look at our current leadership in Washington, that sense of service is certainly not there. Tom Kean Jr. is either too weak or too much of a coward to stand up for us and do what's right. He's just going to do whatever national Republicans tell him to do. And I think that being effective in Washington means standing up for all of us, regardless of political party. And so if national Republicans try to pass policies that are going to hurt families like the legislation that we just saw, I'll stand up and fight back. And if national Democrats can't find their backbone, I'm not going to sit by and wait for permission to do what's right. We have a saying in naval aviation that you're only as good as your last landing. And the reason that we have that saying is it doesn't matter how hard the mission was or how many times you've done it before, you've got to bring the aircraft and the crew home safely every single time. And what that looks like as a Navy helicopter pilot is it's the middle of the ocean, it's the middle of the night, you've got nowhere else to land, you've got to bring the aircraft back to the ship. And you literally have 1 to 2 feet of clearance. And if you don't land exactly where you need to, the aircraft is going to crash and people are going to die. The stakes were life or death then, and they're life or death now. And we deserve a leader who's going to be able to get the job done for us every single time, no matter what. And I'll just say that, I'm happy to get into some of the state of the race. I'm thinking we're probably going to get into that too, Maggie, so I can just pause here and then we can kind of transition into questions. But I'll just say, I really hope if you all are interested in joining the campaign, please join us in this fight. And let's make sure that we're going to send a message to Washington that we're not going to stand by for what their current administration is doing. And let's make sure that we leave the country better off than we found it. So thank you. Yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. That's a great introduction. I see Nick's on the call, so if Nick wants to drop your website into the chat, that would be great. So we're going to start off with a question from Amy.
Yeah. Hi, Rebecca. Really nice to meet you. My question is this, you've answered some of this, so if you want to fill in some more things, what in your background and experience would make you suited to represent NJ7? And why would you be a better choice than other Democrats in the race? Because there's quite a few right now.
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Amy. Appreciate it. Also, I love your room. It looks like one of those nice 3-season rooms. So hopefully it's not too bad in the summer. But so just to answer your first question on the background, I would say I bring a unique combination of skills and experiences, starting with my experience working as a Navy helicopter pilot, and I led in some of the most challenging environments that exist on this earth. I shared that anecdote, but just to share one other story that, we like to call them sea stories in the Navy, but I'll just share one quick story to give folks an idea of, the kind of missions that I had the chance to lead there. So I deployed to the Middle East. I was on the Nimitz, which is an aircraft carrier, as part of the Nimitz Strike Group. And one of the missions that you're responsible for as helicopter pilots is ensuring the safe navigation of the aircraft carrier and the carrier strike group through the Straits of Hormuz. So if folks are familiar with that, I know it's been coming up a lot in the news recently, but that is the very, very narrow body of water that allows ships to be able to transit between the Gulf of Oman and into the Persian Gulf. And so one of the missions that I led as an aircraft commander was ensuring the safe navigation of the carrier. And so it was the aircraft carrier, my helicopter, where I was the aircraft commander for it, responsible for the mission, and then the Iranian ships that were coming out. And it was literally us in between that. And so those are the types of missions that I had the chance to lead. And so bringing that experience of being able to lead in very, very challenging environments. I've also worked in the private sector now. So I have experience working in the private sector, working in healthcare, being able to bring that experience to the table, and how can we bring there are things we can do to bring into government to make government work more efficiently for people from the private sector as well. And then the last piece I would say is that I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I am dealing with all the same issues that everyone else in this district is dealing with. That's why we did this at 8 o'clock tonight, is so I could do bedtime for my kiddos. And, I'm dealing with running my kids around to gymnastics and dance and the challenges. I've been hearing from a lot of folks some of the things that are happening on local school boards. And so there's just a lot of those types of issues that I'm hearing, and I can fundamentally connect with people on those issues because my family is dealing with all those issues as well. And then to your second, I think the second part of that question, Amy, was kind of what's the path to victory? Was that the piece of it there? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so then I would say, the path to victory for this district, and, I will say, really grateful for this organization's leadership. You guys have done just some really incredible work through the last several cycles. And so one of the things I hear a lot from people is they're like, yeah, Rebecca, all that sounds great, but Tom lost, the good Tom lost, so Tom lost and then Sue lost. And so what is it that's different about this cycle? And I would say there are kind of 3 key points that I would like to make here. So point number 1 is that if you look at how the district voted in 2018 with the current district boundary. So I'm sure everyone on this call is well aware that the district got redrawn with the last census, and that's why Tom Malinowski lost his seat. And so, when the district got redrawn with the current map, if you look at how people voted in 2018, which is the first Trump midterm, the district would vote for Democrats. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that Tom Kean Jr. has never been in federal office with a Republican president before. He's only been in federal office when Biden was president. And so our plan for the campaign is to make it very, very clear how what he is doing in Washington is directly impacting people's lives here in the district. And of course, the top of mind is the legislation that just got passed. Unfortunately, a lot of people in this district are really going to suffer and really going to be hurt because of that legislation, but we are going to hold him accountable for that. And so we're going to make it very, very clear how it's directly impacting people's lives here in the district every single day, because he needs to be held accountable for those votes that he's taking. And he's going to continue to take those votes because we know that there is no daylight between him and the National Republican Party. So that's point number 2. And then point number 3 is that the district is split about a third, a third, a third. So it's about a third Democrat, a third independent or unaffiliated, a third Republican. And so our path to victory here is being able to build a broad coalition of people, not just Democrats, but also independents, unaffiliated voters, and even center-right voters who are deeply uncomfortable with what's happening in this administration and looking for new leadership and a check on the current administration. And I am the best candidate in this race to be able to build that coalition. I've already got folks across the political spectrum that are supporting me. And I would say it's because I come at this from a perspective of I'm doing this to serve our community. I'm doing this to serve our country, and looking at it from that perspective. And so even if people don't necessarily agree with me, to your point, on every single position, they understand my values, and they understand that whenever I'm in the room with the door closed, that I'm going to be making decisions for the right reasons. And so that is why we're building this coalition, and that is how we're going to ultimately flip the seat.
Great, thank you. I'll ask the next question. And again, you can, if the questions are repetitive of what you've already said, feel free to just kind of pass them over or remind people of what you said. So the question is, what would your top priorities be as a member of Congress? How could you effectively pursue them as a first-term representative? And what committees would you ask to serve on, and why?
Okay, so the priorities, and then first term, and then committees?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So from a priorities perspective, what I would say is my priority zero is holding the current administration accountable. What we have seen is that Congress has completely abdicated its responsibility to be a co-equal branch of government. And so that to me is priority zero, is being able to flip the House and to provide some form of accountability to the current administration for a number of things. From an actual priorities perspective, and I will say we are in the process of updating the website, so it should be updated soon. So I'm excited to be able to put out more policy information to share with everyone. But from a policy perspective, the three areas that I would really like to focus on are affordability, healthcare, and national security. I will also just say, in general, would love to have follow-up conversations with folks, because where I'm pulling this information from is from having conversations with all of us. And so if there are things that you all think are really important and want to make sure that I'm advocating for, would love to have follow-up conversations. I know that Nick dropped the email in the chat, so please feel free to reach out. Would love to have follow-ups here. But that's where what I've been hearing from people are those three things. So from an affordability perspective, the way that I think about this is in the context of a family. And families can look all different ways, but families in general are having a really hard time making ends meet. It's very expensive to be able to raise a family right now. And so if you're looking at this from a young family who's trying to start, if maybe they want to have kids and they want to be able to have access to paid family leave, or you have a family like mine, I have young kids, and when my two girls were in full-time daycare, we were paying $3,500 a month for them to be in full-time daycare. It is an astronomical amount of money that we are asking families to have to try to pay for to be able to have families and to live the version of the American dream that they want. And then as you get older and you have kids that are trying to decide if they're going to go to college or if they're going to go to trade school, or what does that look like, you get into the sandwich generation. If you have people that are taking care of their parents, taking care of their kids, elder care is very expensive. And so I think just generally, how can we support people better to be able to build their version of the American dream? You know, I am where I am today because of programs. I had an ROTC scholarship for my undergrad. I used the GI Bill for my MBA. I use a VA loan to buy my house. And so I'm a really big believer in helping lift other people up. And so to me, that's the kind of first bucket, is just how can we help people be able to live the version of their version of their life they want to live. The healthcare bucket is the work that I've been doing in the private sector. So from a healthcare perspective, I've worked across a number of different areas. I've worked in oncology, I've worked in women's health, I've worked in gastrointestinal care, and all of those things I've been working in how do we increase access, increase quality, and decrease cost for patients. And so I would love to be able to bring the work that I've been doing in the private sector into government to help make healthcare work more effectively and efficiently for everyone. And then the national security piece, there's a couple of pieces underneath that. So in addition to working as a helicopter pilot, I was also an experimental test pilot for the Navy. And so my responsibility there was developing technology for both the United States as well as partner nations. And from that perspective, and this kind of gets into the committee question there, Maggie, as well, but you know, being able to work more efficiently and thinking about how are we preparing, both how are we supporting our allies around the world, but also how are we making sure the military in the United States is positioned and equipped for 21st century conflicts. And so by that, I mean, how are we thinking about things like cybersecurity? How are we making sure that we're leveraging AI and technology efficiently to make sure that we're developing technology in an efficient, cost-effective way and building the technology that we need to be able to support our military and keeping our country safe? And then the last piece is how are we supporting veterans and military families? For me personally, that's an area that a lot of my volunteer work was focused on before I decided to run for office. And the reason that I volunteer in that space is because I personally found that to be very, very challenging. For making that transition from being in the military and moving into the private sector is very hard for people. And so I spent a lot of time volunteering there and just want to make sure we're supporting our veterans and military families, both when they're on active duty and then also when they come home. So those are the priorities for the kind of first piece of it. And then to your question on what would I get done in the first term, this was one of the things that I thought a lot about before I decided to run for office. And the question that I had was, how much of a difference can you really make? You're going to be one of hundreds. And to your point, Maggie, you know, it's like you're going to be a freshman member of Congress. And ultimately where I landed on this was kind of two things. So one, constituent services are incredibly important. And I think to me, that is an area that I want to have the best constituent services in the country, and being able to make sure that we're taking care of all of us and getting everyone in this district access to the help and care that they need, and being able to make sure that we're really doing that and advocating for them. So I think that's kind of bucket number one, is really being able to do a lot of good there. And then the other piece is, assuming that presumably the way that we would flip the House is by being able to flip this seat. And so we would be coming, assuming I am the person that wins this race, then we would be coming in as part of that class of people that flip their seats red to blue. And my understanding from conversations that I've had is that you have an outsized voice in the party because you're part of the group that really led the charge on being able to flip the House. And so it gives us an opportunity to have a more outsized voice on the policies that we're focusing on and what we're talking about there. So that's the other piece that I would say to that. For folks that know me, I am a very hard worker. And so, I think the other piece I would say here is just, all I can say on that is that I would work my very hardest every single day to do as much as I possibly could in that 2 years to make sure that we're doing as much as we can, as much good as we can in that time period. And then on the committee piece, what I would say is there are a couple of committees I would love to sit on. One is the House Armed Services Committee. So that goes back to my time working as an experimental test pilot, being able to really have oversight into what is happening in the Department of Defense right now. I think Pete Hegseth is unqualified for that position and should resign. He should not be Secretary of Defense. And also being able to think about how we're leveraging technology, developing. I've seen firsthand what that process looks like, and it takes years to be able to get technology out into the hands of the frontline service members. I'll just share one quick story here, which is that we still use floppy disks. So for the helicopter, yeah, just if you look, I know, yeah. So for the helicopter, one of the things that you do is you do a bunch of maintenance. You take the blades off of the helicopter, and then you have to put them back on. And so you have to make sure that they're in balance with each other, because otherwise, bad things happen. And so one of the things you have to do is you have to check to make sure that they're all good. And so what ends up happening is in certain instances, you have to use a floppy disk to do this test. And it's just wild. So we basically have this entire industry that exists to be able to provide antiquated technology to the Defense Department and other parts of the government because we still use this old technology. So I say that just to say there's a lot of work to be done there. I would love to get in there and be able to really focus on how do we use our money more effectively and more efficiently there. And then the other committee that I would love to sit on is the Help Committee. And that one touches a lot of healthcare, but it also has a lot of work around supporting families. I would love to go in there and work on how we're really just generally supporting the care economy and taking care of both from a childcare perspective and elder care. And so those are the two that I would love to sit on. Did I get all of your question pieces there?
You did. You're very efficient.
Okay, great.
Yes, love it.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'll just say, I have to say, I think most of the people on this call, or all of them, love that you mentioned taking care of veterans. I don't know, sometimes the non-right feels like people say that we're not, patriotic or not pro-veterans, but we really, I think, everybody wants to respect the amount of time and effort that our veterans have put into our country. So that's important.
Can I just say something on that really fast, Maggie? Which is, I think, I would say, people ask me about this a lot, and I do. I love this country. It's why I served in the military. It's why I'm doing this now. And to me, loving this country means fighting to make it better. And it's, if you love something, you want to make it better. And so to me, that is patriotism. That is like we are also patriotic and we love our country. We just want to make it better for all of us. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that I think that we have an opportunity here to be able to reclaim that. And there's been some really good conversations out there, I think, on how might we be able to kind of reclaim patriotism and to make sure that we're talking about it as well. Yeah.
Definitely a country born on resistance, being patriotic. So
yes. Yeah.
So our next question is going to come from Monica Scott.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Monica from Warren County Action Together, and we are an invisible group. So thank you. This is the question that the group came up with. As an individual representative, what could or would you do to protect New Jersey's immigrants from being arrested, detained, imprisoned, deported without process or criminal convictions. Due process. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. So, I will say here that we are a nation of immigrants and we're also a nation of laws. And so we should have strong borders. We should be able to make sure that people feel safe and secure. And we absolutely need to make sure that people have access to due process, period, full stop. And so what's happening right now is unacceptable. And that's part of the reason why I think, taking a step back, the immigration system is broken. Part of the issue we're dealing with is because the immigration system has been broken for such a long time. And so, yes, if there are people that are violent criminals in this country, they should not be here. But there are also a lot of people that have been here for a long time. They're part of our society. They're part of our towns and communities. They're paying their taxes, and they just want a better life for their families, just like all of our ancestors, whoever came here, before to help us get here. And so I think part of it is to your exact question, Monica, I would say this is why it's incredibly important that we flip the House, and that way we're able to provide oversight on what ICE is doing. But also, just taking a step back, I do think it's important that we continue to work towards broader immigration system reform to make sure that we're trying to solve some of these issues more holistically as well.
Great, thank you. Next up is a question from Dan Murphy.
Hello, Rebecca. Of course, this is one of the most competitive races in the country, at least we certainly hope it is. And therefore, it's going to be very expensive. And we're in a very expensive media market. Now, I read that you've already raised some $700,000, a good deal ahead of the other primary contenders. So can you tell us what are the sources of campaign funds that you've raised so far and that you expect to be able to tap? And then secondly, how much will you be pursuing and relying on endorsements from the county Democratic committees?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dan. And I will say on that, I do think one of the things that is incredible here is that we do have an opportunity to really have an outsized impact on the future of our country. We know this is going to be one of the top 10 races in the country next year. And so I think that's an incredible opportunity to be able to flip the seat and to be able to be part of the group that's taking back the House. So I just, wanted to start with that. But I would say to your question, yes, I have raised almost $1 million. I raised $480,000 my last quarter. I've raised almost $1 million now. And so, but the way that I'm doing that is conversations like this and just meeting with people and talking to them, and really across the political spectrum. I would say, really people are resonating with this message. I think people are looking for new, fresh perspectives, new voices, new leadership. And so that is really resonating with people. And that's really where the money is coming from, people that are donating to the campaign because they believe in this movement that we're building, and they want to be able to support it. And I think to your point, we'll continue to fundraise, we'll continue to build the resources that we need to be able to flip this seat next year. But yeah, it is very expensive to be able to run in this district for sure. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Rebecca. We appreciate your answer, and we're going to turn to Regina for the next question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Regina, and I'm in Lambertville in the southernmost tip of District 7. My question is, how would you present yourself to voters across the district in urban areas, the wealthy suburbs, and in rural towns? What policies and messages do you believe that you could bring to those disparate communities to bring them together to support your candidacy?
Yeah, thanks, Regina. And I will just say on that this is me. Like the version that I am talking right now, this is just Rebecca. This is the same version that I talk to if I'm out in the rural parts of the district or talking to suburban people, really across the spectrum. And I would say just, taking a step back, I think people are understandably scared and uncertain about what's happening in this country right now. It's a really scary time, and they're looking for leaders that are going to be able to help bring us kind of through this moment and hopefully to a better version of the country to be able to navigate through this path. And so to me, ultimately taking a step back on what are my values? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I love this country. I'm doing it because I want to be a voice for all of us and to serve this community. And I think those things are true really across every part of the district. So yes, there are definitely different pockets of the district, and different areas have different challenges and different priorities. But I would say that, and would love to continue these conversations. I know we've got people from all over the district that are represented on this call, but the pieces that I mentioned before around affordability, healthcare, national security, those are still applicable in the different parts of the district. And so, yes, some areas might be more focused on potentially environmental impacts or transportation or other things, but those are all things that we can kind of ladder up into those bigger buckets there.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to have a question from Joan Peters.
Sorry, it's late. It's late for an old lady.
It's late for me too. I know. It's yeah.
It's great to meet you. What could or would you do to help those who stand to lose Medicaid, SNAP, and other benefits due to Republican budget cuts?
Yeah. Well, I will say on that one, the legislation that got passed is awful. And I just think it is the complete opposite of what we should be doing as a society. We should be supporting people that need care and not taking it away to give tax breaks for the wealthiest among us. And really, we're taking healthcare and food benefits away, taking healthcare away from the people that need it the most. We're taking food benefits away from kids and seniors. We're blowing up the deficit, and for what? Just to give tax breaks for billionaires? It doesn't make any sense. It's generational theft. It is the complete opposite of what we should be doing as a country. I will say, one thing that we haven't talked about tonight yet is that this election is next year in 2026, but this year we have an opportunity to make sure that we elect Democrats up and down ballot in New Jersey. And I think we have an incredible opportunity to be able to send a message to the rest of the country that New Jersey is not going to stand by for what's going on. And so I think, helping get Mikey Sherrill elected as governor, helping get Democrats elected down ballot. To your point, Joan, I think that is one place that we're able to help push back on some of this legislation that we're seeing. And then, the other piece of it in the short term is what can we do in our communities? So my church that I go to, we have a food bank associated with the church there. And we've been talking about this of what can we do? Because 9 and 10 of the meals that we have are funded through SNAP. And that's just a huge hole in our budget. And so, we're having really hard conversations right now about how are we going to help fill these gaps. And I'm hearing these conversations from food banks across the state and across the district. And so, I think these are unfortunately the really tough conversations that we're going to have. And then medium term, which is, ultimately we will flip this seat, take back the House, and be able to claw back some of the legislation that was passed to be able to make sure that we're restoring those benefits for people.
Great. We have a question from BC Conley now.
Good evening, Rebecca. Calling in from New Providence. A pleasure to meet you. Rebecca, if you're elected and the Democratic Party takes control of Congress, what actions would you favor to reverse some of Trump's policies? Would that include impeaching and removing Trump and some of his administration officials?
Yeah, thanks, VC. I will say that there's a lot of damage being done right now to the federal government. My husband is a federal employee. He works for the Department of Energy. And so we've unfortunately had a kind of a front row seat to just what we've been seeing in the damage that's being done there on that. And so, to your point, I think it's going to take a lot of time to be able to rebuild the organizations and just the expertise that we had within the government there. So I think from that perspective, in the short term, working on getting some of this funding back to make sure that New Jersey and the 7th district is getting their fair share and that we're able to get people's actual benefits back. On the specifics around kind of impeaching someone, I will say that impeaching a president is one of the most serious things that I would do as a congresswoman. And so that is something that I do not take lightly. It's an incredibly serious piece of the role and something that I would take very seriously. No one should be above the law. everyone should be held accountable to the same standards. This is how it was in the military, is we were all held to a very high standard, and leaders should be held to the highest standard. And so I would say that, I don't want to necessarily comment on a hypothetical here because there's not specific articles of impeachment, but I will say that I do think that people should be held accountable for their actions, their decisions, and that we should make sure that we're holding people accountable to the laws that are in this country.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, BC. And Rebecca, our last predetermined question comes from Ellie Sider.
Hi, I also just want to thank Maggie again for organizing all of this. But Rebecca, for the last question, you already touched on supporting allies around the world a little bit, but maybe you can expand on that a little bit here. The last question is, would you push for improving US relations with NATO, the EU, and other allies, despite the Trump administration's disdain for those alliances?
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. And yes, just to echo that, yes, thank you, Maggie and team, for organizing this. I'm sure it was a lot of work to do, so very much appreciate it. Yes, 100%. I think, I saw this firsthand in the military of being deployed overseas. I've seen how important our allies are around the world. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to strengthen and support our allies around the world. So yes, NATO. And so 100%, I think that is very important and should be a bedrock of our democracy, that we continue to support our allies around the world. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also just want to say, I saw a comment in the chat around the VA and the Lions VA. And so, Jennifer, I saw that you put that in there, and we actually did a veterans roundtable recently in Bernardsville. And that was one of the things that we talked about, is just how hard it is to get access to care. I'm a veteran. I have a service connected disability rating. And so I personally found it very challenging to navigate to be able to get the care that I am entitled to. And so we had this really great conversation around just how hard it is to be able, kind of to your point, Maggie, about veterans, just how are we supporting our veterans community? And I've not heard anything from Tom Keene Jr., to your point, about the cuts being made to the VA. I've not heard anything about him. I've not heard anything from him on that. That's one thing that I've been talking about quite a bit, is just the cuts that are being made, but to your point about healthcare, how we're supporting veterans more broadly. And so I do think that's an incredibly important thing, and is in the district in the Lions VA. So yeah, I just appreciate you calling that up.
All right. So again, that concludes our predetermined questions. But I see that Reggie has a question. If you're okay with it, Reggie will come off mute and ask his question.
I've already met Rebecca once, and I've made a donation already, simply because she's been endorsed by Vote Vets, which is a PAC that tries to find veterans to run for office, all Democrats. But the reality is, not every Vote Vets endorsed candidate, Democrat, has won. And in CD7, the Democrats are greatly outnumbered by independents and Republicans. It's not a third. The Democrats are the lowest of the three groups. So we will need a candidate. We will need a lot of money. We will need some heavy hitters to come to Warren County. Warren County is where I live. CD7, because we have a lot of ignorant voters, because otherwise Trump would not be the president. Trump's the president because we have a lot of ignorant voters, and we need a candidate who's going to educate the people. In 2024, Trump became elected because of immigration. The Democrats had no answer for all of the illegal immigrants, not just at the border, but the 11 million illegal immigrants who live in this country. 9 million of them work in this country every day. 9 million illegal immigrants are working in this country every day. Without them, our economy would be in shambles. So I'm challenging you, Rebecca, to arrange to work alongside the farm laborers. This is peach season in New Jersey. 200 million individual peaches will be handpicked by Mexicans, both legal and illegal farm laborers. And what I would like to see you do is say, I'm going to work alongside those farm laborers. I'm going to find a farmer who's going to allow me to go out in the field with a camera crew and show the American people, this is how we defeat Trump on this issue of immigration, that these are essential workers, and no native-born American is going to do that work. So I'm going to challenge you, Rebecca, like I've challenged all the other candidates so far. I missed Mr. Roth last night, so I didn't get a chance to challenge him. But I'm going to challenge you this summer to go out in a farm field for 8 hours alongside those farm laborers, because we're sitting in air conditioning while they're out there working. That's how food ends up on our table. And that's an issue that both red and blue voters must all agree on. We need that food in our supermarkets. And the only way it gets there is by those farm laborers. And somebody has to educate them, and maybe it'll be you.
Well, hey, Reggie, great to see you again. Appreciate you coming on tonight. And yes, I have, to your point, I did not mention this earlier, but I have been endorsed by both Vote Vets and New Politics, which are the national organizations that support veterans and people with service backgrounds. To your question, I know that I think my team's already been in contact with you about that. So yeah, happy to follow up. I think it's incredibly important that we understand people across the district. So yeah, happy to follow up there as well on figuring that out.
Thanks, Rebecca. We have a question from Kieran.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for being here tonight. My question was kind of in terms of political strategy. Do you have a plan to mobilize volunteers to kind of create a very big door knocking campaign? Because in my opinion, that's the best way to convince voters and educate voters. And also, do you have any plans to mobilize the youth too to get that done?
Yeah, well, thanks for your question. And I would say I would love to if you're interested in volunteering. I know I mentioned at the top, but really truly, if folks are interested in volunteering or joining the campaign, would love to have you join the team. And so I think if Karen, if you're interested, happy to follow up afterwards. I will say in general, one of the things that we're doing is really thinking about. So yes, to your question, yes, we are planning on engaging with people, but also we're thinking about how do we meet people where they are? And by that, I mean, it's hard to ask people to come out to do things like this. That's why I'm so grateful for all of you for taking time out of your schedules to talk to me tonight and, have this conversation. But it is hard for people and people are busy. And so that's one of the things we've been thinking about is how do we meet people where they are? And so is that going to sporting events? Is that going to playgrounds? Is that going to places where we can meet voters that maybe aren't necessarily as connected into the political system? And to your point, Kieran, I think to me, there's a couple of opportunities. Would love to get your thoughts on this as well. But how can we engage with what I've been hearing from folks that are, I'm going to say people in their 20s is, I don't blame them, but a lot of them are kind of checked out because what they've been seeing and all they've known for essentially their entire kind of adult life is this era of discourse and rhetoric, and just everybody is really toxic. And so I don't blame people for checking out. And so I think this is where what we're doing is saying, hey, we have an opportunity to say, I know things are not working for you right now, but to be able to say we can create a positive vision for the future and we can make things better for all of us together, as opposed to what happened with the previous administration where it was very divisive and othering, but we can create this positive vision to help make things better for people. And really to acknowledge the challenges that, I don't want to speak for you, but the challenges that your generation is facing. And so whether that is trying to find a job coming out of college or dealing with student loan debt or, whatever the case may be there, but really coming up with solutions for problems that you all are specifically dealing with and being able to talk about that as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, to your point, I always, or not always tell this story, but I have a nephew who's 21 and his mother, this was during the first Trump administration, his mother was telling him about 9/11 and how horrific the events were and all the deaths. But one of the best things that came out of it was how people really supported one another and nobody asked what political party you belonged to or whether you had a green card or not. And his response was he couldn't even imagine that. So I think, to some degree, that's why young people, are where they are, because they don't know a world where we've really worked together like Americans are possible, or it's possible to do in America. So we have, looks like our final question from Joseph.
Hi, Rebecca. My name is Joseph Sherrill from Branchburg. So I see you have a lot of energy and you're very impressive. I'm also a chemical engineer, so I see that you are one who takes on a challenge and completes it. I mean, chemical engineering is the toughest curriculum. But my
Joseph said it, not
question,
me, but
or
yes, it is. Yeah.
yeah. My question is, Tom Kaine is extremely unpopular, and I think the Republicans will put forth another candidate. On Kaine's Facebook page, hundreds of constituents are mad at him for not having a town hall in 2.5 years. Who do you think that other candidate will be, and how do you plan to defeat him? And also, if elected, you need to punch back at Trump. Now, this bill that just was passed, this big ugly bill, has $150 billion in it for new ICE agents. And just to give you some perspective, this $150 billion is twice the military budget of Germany. Their budget for defense is $80 billion. So, I mean, the Democrats ought to be on TV every day saying that these ICE agents are going to go out like the Gestapo and round up undocumented, without due process and send them to a third country. Maybe they came from Nicaragua. They're going to San Salvador. So, I mean, I'm very disappointed in the Democrats that they don't punch back at Trump. And Trump called the Democrats pedophiles, and they did nothing. They didn't come back and refute what he said. I would have sued him. So, I mean, are you going to punch back at Trump? I guess that's my bottom line question. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Joseph. It's always nice to meet a fellow chemical engineer. I feel like there's not that many of us out there. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I will say to your question at the top, I think if Tom Kaine Jr. is not the nominee for the Republican Party, what we know is kind of going back to the conversation at the beginning of why am I the best person to flip the seat, is that we saw this in 2018. We know people with national security backgrounds are very well positioned to go have conversations with people across the political spectrum. And so because we're coming at this from this perspective of country over party. And so I think that is the way that we're going to flip the seat, regardless of who the nominee is. I would assume that it's going to be Tom Kaine Jr. And if it is, then I think being able to contrast his experience with my experience and being able for me to say, look, I've led in some of the most challenging environments that exist on this earth. I'm also a mom of 2 kids, and I fundamentally understand the challenges people in this district are facing in a way that Tom Kaine Jr. never will, because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he does not understand the challenges that we are dealing with, because he just doesn't, and he's never going to. And he's also never going to stand up for us. He is going to follow whatever the National Republican Party tells him to do. We already saw this. He just got endorsed by Trump for the first time a few weeks ago. And so he's never going to stand up for us. He's just not. And so being able to have that conversation and showing that contrast between me, where I am very fortunate to be able to be where I am, but it is because of programs like being able to have an ROTC scholarship and a GI Bill and VA loan, as opposed to, Kaine, which is a very different kind of life experience there. And, just to the point about ICE, the ICE budget is now bigger than the Marine Corps. And so I think at the end of the day, where we're spending our money also talks about our priorities. And so it goes back to we should be taking care of people and making sure people have access to healthcare and food benefits, and that we should just be taking care of people in our country and making sure that the weakest among us have the support and care that they need, and not doing what the current bill has. And that's why I think it is incredibly important that we fire Tom Kaine next year, or if he decides to remove himself early. And, there's parallels between, this is what happened with Mikey and Hersey, that they basically scared out the incumbent. And so if we do that, then great. But, if not, then he's going to be out of a job in a couple of, come 2027 anyway.
Great. Yep. I think
you will blow him away. Right.
Well, it's a helicopter. It's the downwash. That's the, so yeah.
All right, good point there. Wynn has a question.
Hi, Rebecca. I'm Wynn. I live in Tewksbury. Of 3 months, living my thug life out here. I love it. My question for you is, in the past two elections, we had two amazing candidates who worked their tails off in Malinowski and Sue Altman. Two very intelligent candidates who debated with him and wiped the floor, but they still lost. So what do you think will win it, considering we had such excellent candidates and still lost? And in a highly partisan, and it's even more partisan, they're just going to vote for the Republican. And I applaud you for wanting to do constituency services as your potential constituent. I would really appreciate that. But it doesn't look like his voters care. They don't care that he shows up for them. They don't care that he shows up for debates or not. They don't care that he doesn't hold public town halls. They don't care. They're just going to vote. So what are you going to do differently than Tom and Sue?
Yeah, well, I will say I thought that Tom Malinowski was a great representative. I was very sad to lose him as our representative whenever he lost. I also think Sue is incredible. And to your point, both of them ran incredibly great races. They are incredibly hard workers. They're both really great people. I will say, just kind of recapping the couple points that I made before, I do think that the kind of to the 3 points of why is this cycle different than the last couple, there's the political dynamics are different at a national level in the way that we would expect to see, similar to what we saw in 2018, which was the first Trump midterm. The second piece being that it is different that this is the first time Kane's ever been in office at the federal level with a Republican president. And so he is now going to have a much harder voting record to be able to defend in a way that we're going to be able to make it very concrete and specific. And so, to your point, when maybe they didn't care about the town halls, but they will care if their energy prices go up by another 20% because of the bill that just got passed. And they will care if their kids can't get access to special education because they cut the budget for the Department of Education. And so I think there are things that we can talk about what's happening at a federal level and how it's directly impacting families here, and to make sure that that piece of it is very, very clear. And then the last piece that I would say is we know that people with national security backgrounds are uniquely positioned to be able to go have conversations with voters across the spectrum. And it gives the opportunity to have a conversation with people that may not necessarily entertain it otherwise. And I'm already seeing this. So, I think I mentioned earlier, but we did a town hall in Bernardsville a few weeks ago, and I had Republicans there that were saying, hey, I'm supporting Rebecca because I know that she is a veteran and she took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And so I know her values, and I know I am going to support her because I'm not happy with what's happening in this country. And so I've already got people that are supporting me. And so I think that's how we build this coalition, is we get Democrats excited and activated. And to, Karen's point, we're able to bring new people into the conversation to be able to get them engaged. We just saw this with the primary. I don't remember the exact number, but we saw a huge increase in the number of people that registered as Democrats because of the governor's primary. We saw tens of thousands of people that registered and got engaged in the democratic process. And so I do think we have an opportunity here to be able to bring new people in to this conversation, to get them engaged and excited, but then also to be able to appeal to those independent and center-right voters as well. And so that's, kind of building that broad coalition to be able to flip the seat.
Thank you.
Excuse me for a minute, but I just have to say something. Sue Altman got defeated because the Republicans kept on running that commercial saying she was a radical extremist, and they showed her being dragged away to jail. Well, what she was doing was she was protesting the state giving Norquist $1 billion as a write-off, and she got it reversed. But she never came out and refuted what they were picturing her as. So that's one of the reasons she got defeated. And I hope you don't let them bully you like that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Joseph, for your comment. And to that point, I think Rebecca and all the candidates are well aware of Republican tactics. And Rebecca, if you want to comment on it, feel free. We're at 8:56. I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's time, and also the energy it takes to run for office and get on Zoom with lipstick at 8 o'clock at night after putting your kids to bed. So, but this will be like the closeout to tonight's Zoom.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I just want to say, really appreciate everyone taking some time to meet and speak tonight and share your thoughts in this conversation. Maggie, thank you to putting this together and for organizing this, and really hope this is just the first of many conversations. So really do please feel free to reach out. Would love to continue the conversation with anyone on this call. If folks have thoughts or, want to provide additional suggestions or feedback or want to get involved, please reach out. Would love to get you added onto the team. And so, yeah, looking forward to continuing the conversation and just want to say thank you all so much.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Again, thanks, Rebecca, for coming on. And we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Good night.